All right, this is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm your host. We have a returning guest, a good friend of the show, Irena Baptiste. I hope I'm saying your name correctly, sis. I only speak one language, and that's Kentucky English. It's barely accepted in other parts of the United States, but I think I got the first name correct. And folks, she really gave us some great insights on the situation in Cuba. You know what it meant to be raised in that whole socialist system. She trained Marxists, things of that nature, and then she talked about her conversion to Christianity. Very powerful story testimony. Go to my website at booktalkwithcorbin.com and pull up her interview. You'll get a lot. You get a lot from it. Sis, today I wanted to talk to you, spend the next 15 minutes talking to you about some sort of update on the situation in Cuba. I don't really get the impression that much has been said in the mainstream media. I do know the brothers and sisters of theirs were basically sort of uprising. I've never seen that before.
Nothing since.
And what can you tell us? What's going on right now?
Well, Corbin, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure talking to you and having the opportunity to impact your audience. And you're right. Nothing is being said on the media, but we already know that the media will not talk about important topics. So even topics that are essential for the American people. They try to cover the border and everything. So can you imagine? Will they talk about Cuba? Basically, when you remember Barack Obama went to
Yes.
Cuba.
Yes.
And by all means, the current administration is a continuation of that administration for so many reasons. None the least of which is that they have the same excellent relationship with the dictatorship with the Castro communism in Cuba. They have the same relationship. For that reason, you see, they have moved away and returned to Haiti, the people that have recently migrated. To Cubans, they simply stood up and tell them, don't come. You remember that when the 11th of July, I mean, from our last conversation tonight, between our last conversation and this one, 11th of July happened, meaning the Cubans went into the streets. And that very powerful first flow of people to the streets, sick and tired of communism, sick and tired of oppression, sick and tired of hunger, famine, and the most inhumane way of living and dying. The most inhumane way of living and dying. That when people went there, when Cubans decided that it was time to go into the streets, it was the result of a really strong work job done by the influencers. But the fact that the internet has arrived in Cuba and people get the opportunity to tell on their own words the tragedy they're living.
Right, and I think that's a key statement you said there. Say in their own words, speak for themselves, and also I think it's a great tragedy that from your perspective, you have to give us the bad news. No, they're not really. The mainstream media is really not giving us, daily updates and things like that. They're not really giving us good coverage. And yet, Cuban Americans have been such an important part of the growth and progress in this country. I mean, they're a very important community in Florida. They're a very important community here in Louisville. Hey, I want to know what's going on, period. Cuban Americans have
Yes, people have been taking it to the streets. You have seen the demonstrations, which have not been publicized by the media at all.
Right.
There was this huge, massive demonstration in Washington, D.C., that they also tried to silence, and it was 60,000 Cubans in Washington, D.C. I don't know if you know the numbers, but there were 60,000 Cubans in Washington, D.C., in front of the White House, speaking with President Biden, just to grant to the Cuban people a humanitarian intervention. It's not a military intervention, Corbin. It's humanitarian.
And how did
Look,
the Biden administration respond?
have you ever heard nobody ever go to Cuba to do absolutely nothing?
Wow.
You know, nothing has been done.
So, if you were let's pretend that I'm going to give you 3 minutes with President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and their top advisors. I want you to talk to them about, hey, here's what you can do. Here are like 2 or 3 things you can do to help the Cuban people. What would you say?
First of all, President Biden, if you can grant the Cubans the right to have access to the internet, the first thing that have to be done is to let the stories come out, let the truth come out. Second of all, President Biden, our country is in a desperately, people are dying in the middle of the streets. They are corpses in the street, corpses that have been buried, and there is such a lack of manpower to handle the pandemic that even in the graveyards, people are laying dead with the graves wide open. Wow. And vultures eating the remains. We desperately need a corpse, a humanitarian corpse, the UN corpse, a corpse to help just to handle the amount of sick and dying people. Can you imagine President Biden in our hospitals? With dead people are laying next to people who are gravely ill with the COVID pandemic. And third of all, and most important of all, President Biden, stop supporting the regime that is killing my people.
It's a pretty powerful statement, and we hope somehow or another that President Biden hears that and it touches his heart in some fashion, form, or another, and responds. Because everything you said is perfectly reasonable. I mean, access to the internet so that the folks can speak for themselves. Simple humanitarian assistance. I mean, come on. I mean, and then those things are perfectly reasonable, perfectly sensible. Let's go back a little bit in history. How did you view the the Obama administration's relationship with Cuba? Were they helpful, hurtful, combination of the two?
The relationship, the way I see it, Corbin, and I don't want to make it a one side or other side issue. But the matter of the fact, the undeniable fact, is that every time that the Democrats have been in power, the government have a field day. The Cuban government have a field day. They are very much in a kind of like bromance with each other. They court each other, and the Obama administration was nonetheless. As a matter of fact, we know that the dry feed, wet feed law that President Bush passed was repealed on his very last day in the government by President Obama. He did not repeal it before. I don't think he will. He did. That was a calculated move. He knew he was getting out of the White House. He knew that the consequences, the backlash from those consequences were not going to be suffered by his administration. So he waited until the very last minute to comply, or to not to comply. I don't think he was complying. He was granting to somebody something that somebody else told you, this has to be done. But we don't want you to suffer the consequences. We want you to wait until the very last minute. And when nobody can do anything because there is an ex-president coming in, do it. And he just revoked a dry feed, wet feed. Wow. The consequences has been, there are 10,000 Cubans in the border right now.
Wow. This is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm your host. Go to our website. Go to my website, booktalkwithcorbin.com, and look up this sister's, our first interview with this sister here. Very powerful speaker, just a great American and fantastic Cuban patriot. And sister, you also preach the gospel, don't you?
I am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's great. So I don't know how this whole COVID thing is impacting some people's travel, but if someone from another state wanted you to come and preach, and not only come preach but also talk about Cuba, would you be open to that?
I will. I will. As a matter of fact, COVID has impacted in many ways. We have lost so much pastors right here in town.
Mm,
Last week we had to bury one pastor to COVID. But tell you what, it have impacted our ability to maybe just move around. But there is groups of intercessors in town
mm,
that through Zoom, Facebook, Messenger, and WhatsApp are praying at
mm,
5 a.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m., and 10 p.m. in the nighttime,
mm-hmm.
every single day.
Wow.
Those are groups of women, Hispanic women that are making intercession non-stop for
Mm,
the sick, for the dying, for the people at the border, for the people that are suffering, in different places.
right.
This is what we're doing, really, actually, more than going out and preaching that, it has severe problems. But
Right. Okay.
the intercession don't stop. We are working hard at it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And sis, I wanted to wrap up this interview and talking a little bit about, and your perspective is really, I mean, it's invaluable. Satya Shakur, as you know, Satya Shakur was a member of the Black Liberation Army. Basically,
Yeah,
it's a terrorist organization.
yeah, it's a black.
She was involved in the murder of a New Jersey police officer, and another New Jersey police officer was severely injured. Uh, she got a fair and free trial here in the United States. She was convicted. Um, then she escaped and went into the underground and eventually ended up in Cuba. Like so many, so-called revolutionaries from the United States that would
Mhm.
run to Cuba for asylum. So, could you give us some perspective, your perspective on someone like Satya Shakur and others like her who are basically criminals?
Yeah, I'll tell you something, Corbin. Asata Shakur and the rest of the criminals that have been, received and who lived in Cuba. If you remember this guy who recently died, even McAfee
Hmm.
was with his wife in Cuba very recently, up until the time that he got, I guess, the FBI caught him and he died in jail. They say whatever it is they say about the circumstance of his death happens to be. The reality of the Cuban government is that the Cuban government has been a haven for people who are essentially terrorists.
Hmm.
But I do believe that the fact of these ladies is still there in Cuba shows something that goes beyond herself. She is the proof that the Black community, the African American community in the United States, have a deep ignorance about the Cuban realities.
Yes. Yes.
The
You're
same
right.
government that received very handsomely Jay-Z and Beyonce, who
Mm-hmm.
also went to Cuba, if you remember.
Yes.
That same government have one of the musicians who, the composer of the Patria y Vida song, who have become the battle song and the battle cry of Cubans all over the world.
Mm.
And that was one of the triggers for the 11th of July civil disobedience expressions and demonstrations in the country.
Mm.
Do you know that one of these, of that, there's two of the musicians who composed the song, they had to do it in hiding
Mm. Wow.
because the government was after them. And one of them has been currently disappeared. People don't know where the guy is.
Mm.
That's since for the last 30 days. Michael Osorbo is disappeared, have disappeared. And the government is not giving faith of life, is not saying anything about him.
Mm.
And yet, every time you listen to hear to the African American community speaking about Cuba, they always speaking about the blockade.
Mm-hmm.
They always talking about lift of the embargo, which is the same discourse of the Cuban dictatorship, and have nothing to do with the realities of the Cuban people.
Wow. Let
So
me.
somewhere, somehow, the Black community in America, the African Americans, have drank the Kool-Aid of the communism.
Right. Right.
I told you that last time, didn't I?
Yes. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. But let me just reiterate something you said here. Musicians in Cuba who wrote a song of dissent that is widely accepted, heralded, praised by Cuban folk.
Nominated by the Latin Grammys.
Wow.
As Song of the Year by the Latin Grammys.
And they are running for their lives.
Do we have time to see a part of it, a little part of it?
Yeah, sure. If you can post it, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll show you because this song is nominated for the Latin Grammys. And I want you to understand that when you see this, that when you see this, there are five black men singing the song. Okay? 5 black men singing the song. And out of these 5 black men, 3 are in the United States, but 2 are in Cuba. See that little bit of the song. And I want everybody from the African American community all over the United States to see 5, there we go, to see 5 black Cubans. 5 black Cubans. And it have 8.5 million views.
Wow, 8.5 million. Oh, my Lord.
8.5 million views.
That's a small country right there.
Yeah. Cuba have 11 million people. So
wow.
That's an entire country.
But I want to keep reiterating to people, these 2 gentlemen you referred to are in Cuba. One, we don't know where his whereabouts is. The other one, he's basically running for his life for writing a song of dissent, period.
The Cuban government.
Right.
And these 5 black men.
Yes. And yet this is the same regime that welcomes Obama and what's that? The Jay-Z and his wife and
Beyonce.
Yeah, they talk about how wonderful it is, and yet they have.
Yeah, even the wife, Jill Biden, was there.
Oh my goodness! They turn into a family vacation.
Which is a public education system, which is a complete disaster.
Yes. Yeah. Oh man, it's just ridiculous. And now we have this Satya Shakur. Are they very open and walking about in Cuba or?
They are open and walking about, but think about that. The Cuban people don't have any idea who are they.
Wow.
Cuban people don't have idea who are they.
Wow. Okay.
So she's been there for years and years and years and years. First of all, not many people knows how these people live there, under what circumstances. I should not be like the normal people, because the normal people lives really bad.
Yes.
In a really bad situation, first of all. And second of all, they don't walk among us. No, they've been treated, but they've been well kept over there. Yes, they do.
So what benefit do you think the Cuban government receives in giving shelter or asylum to someone like an Satya Shakur?
These people are the door to their organizations, aren't they? These people have relationships. These people have contacts in America. That's the reason why you find the government saying, a lot of this organization, BLM, is saying just to remove to lift up the embargo. Why would BLM say that? That's an organization that started the other day.
Right.
Why would these people say that? Those are the connections. I know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody.
Right.
That's how the news is spread.
Wow. I'm going to make sure that this song's posted. Let
the African American community know that there are black people in Cuba.
Yes.
That we have been killed. That we have living in a squalor and misery.
Absolutely.
And the same government that is telling them, come to Cuba to learn and stuff like that, will kick and beat even women and children. Mm-hmm. Black women and children.
Right. Tell them the truth. We got to tell them the truth, sister.
Tell them the truth.
Yes. Sis, I'm going to close it here. I did want to share with you that I am working with a couple other people, and we're developing a petition where we want presented to key agencies. We're hoping that the Kentucky's 2 senators will present this petition to key agencies here in the United States, where we are demanding the immediate and unconditional extradition of Satya Shakur from Cuba, and should be brought back to the United States to face justice. And we hope that this petition would generate discussion and about, generally start talking about the true conditions of the Cuban people, start talking about terrorists like her, how they do not reflect the legitimate aspirations of the Cuban people or black folk in the United States, and that, criminal behavior is criminal behavior, period. It's criminal behavior is criminal behavior. I don't care what your rhetoric is. And we do know that basically, in many ways, the socialist regime in Cuba is criminal. It's obviously repressive. And, someone like Satya Shakur, she's a criminal, and criminals need to be brought to justice and paid for their crimes. Sister, as always.
Let's hope with all our faith and pray with all our faith, Corbin, that this actual government we have will develop a sense of decency and righteousness and do what is right.
Yes,
rather than to be what is politically convenient.
Exactly. Do what's right. Do the right thing. President Biden, you heard it straight from the mouth of my sister, Irena. Let's pray. Let's pray you listen, brother. Let's pray you listen. Tell him, President, you got to listen, man. All right, sis, I got to cut us off here, and, I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Corbin.
Hope we can do it again sometime soon.
All the time. Anytime, he said.